Right, I'm not ready. There. I'll call this meeting of the General Government and Finance Committee to order at 6 o'clock. This order has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call. All members are present. And with that, we will move to approval of the minutes of April 19th, 2021.
Second.
Second here. We have a motion to approve the minutes of April 19th, 2021. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Is there anyone online? Doesn't look that way, huh? And there's nobody in the room, so I guess we will move then to new business. Item A, employee retention. And is Michelle going to take this one? Okay.
So before I get into what I plan to say, I feel like I should address the elephant in the room, which is that I'm going to talk about employee retention, and yet I am leaving. I just to, be honest, this is something that I've been thinking about for a little while. The commute is it's too much. It's an hour plus each way, and I'm not as young as I used to be. So, it's been a difficult decision, but that is, what's happening with me. But besides me, let's talk about ways we can help keep the rest of our staff. I've done a lot of research on this, and I included some in the packet. We also have conducted it was about an hour focus group with some of our newer employees where I asked them a bunch of questions and got their feedback. Some people were a lot more forthcoming than others. And then I have also done exit interviews with our employees who are leaving. And then we had a really, I think, productive discussion as department heads last week about retention and retention efforts. And so we got some feedback from some of our longer term employees as well. And there are some different things that we heard through that. It seems like the longer you're here, the more compensation is the key driver for whether you would leave or not. And we're definitely seeing that in the market right now. Steve was pointing out today that the MEC1 is posted for a finance director. The bottom end is 115-ish. And that's hard if other communities are paying at that level. So that is one component. And it is unfortunately the hardest one to fix. So I wanted to point it out, but want to talk about some other things too that we can do. What I heard from some of our newer staff is really flexibility is the biggest thing. They want more work-life balance. So for some, that means they want the ability to telecommute a little bit more often. For some, it means maybe having a day where they come in early or late so that they can accommodate carpool or something. For some, it's having more paid time off, whether it's because they have a young child or because they want to take advantage of their early 20s and go to Europe. There are different drivers that I heard from them. But the key thing that I really took away from that and that I've taken from the research is that because one size doesn't fit all, one of the best things that, in my opinion, Germantown can do is allow the administrator a little bit of like flexibility so that if there is a circumstance where a particular employee is thinking about leaving, but we know that extra paid time off would make a difference, should we consider, finding a way to do that? Or I'm trying to think of some good suggestions, but they're in my thing. But really what it came down to is it there's all kinds of reasons people leave. But overall, work-life balance seems to be the number one. And there are a lot of things, like I said, that fall under that. Specifically, and you'll notice I did not ask for anything in this memo. Initially, when I drafted this, I did have some specific policies included, but we decided to take another shot at them after getting feedback from staff. So this is more for discussion and to get your feedback and to hear what ideas you absolutely hate and which ones you think are great. And it's just anything that I haven't thought of too as well. But in my notes specifically, I mentioned broadening our telecommuting policy. We did pass one a couple years ago, but the essence of that is that it should be very, very limited in very small circumstances. And while we still think it should be very limited because many of our positions simply can't telecommute, we do think that we need to broaden the ability for those who can to be able to do that. And for example, with me, with the commute, a long-term arrangement where I could telecommute could have made a difference. I'm not saying it would have necessarily, but it definitely could be a factor. So there are some positions where that may be relevant. I also suggested putting a small pool of money aside for spot bonuses and retention bonuses to be used at administrator discretion. The reason it's at administrator discretion is partly because that allows discretion in general. It doesn't have to be public conversation. It also allows us to move a little bit more quickly. So we had an employee we found out about recently that was interviewing somewhere else, and we all had a moment of thinking, we don't want to lose this employee. And there was some discussion about, what do we do? And there wasn't a lot we could do, and fortunately that person with us, so it didn't matter. But a retention bonus where we could say, hey, if you'll stay, here's an extra $1,000, could be useful. But more than that, the spot bonuses would be smaller, $100 increment, great job on finishing X project, to show appreciation. The money that we were talking about would be a very limited amount of money. It would not, we're not asking for a lot. And I think they'll have a specific number for you in the next meeting. The ability to grant one-time, one-day paid time off to recognize extraordinary effort. That would again also be administrator discretion. And in that instance, we're talking about like somebody just spent 70 hours, in the last week trying to finish a project, and to be able to say to them, hey, take Friday off would be really useful. But the directors all agreed that that is something that they would want to be used sparingly, and it would have to be known to staff that it is not something anyone can expect because not everyone will get it. The ability to increase an employee's pay within their pay grade outside of performance reviews. And that goes back to what we were talking about as far as the employee who might be leaving, instead of giving them a retention bonus, being able to increase their pay within their pay grade. And that would also be administrator discretion. And then there are a couple that don't really require much from the board. One would be creation of career development paths. So we have a couple of employees that we know could be a department director someday. So we need to figure out what are the steps that they need to take to get to that point. And that may involve training, it may involve certifications, but helping them put together a plan. And that plan may or may not involve some kind of incentive along the way, depending on the person and the situation. Improve training, including cross-training for all of our staff. Flexible work schedules for those who can. For example, if a department has 2 administrative assistants and, one comes in early one day and leaves late, just have a flexibility as long as counter coverage is there. And then increased wellness programming. we heard, or I've heard a lot about, that people want to take care of themselves, and wellness programming doesn't just have to be, a health assessment, or it doesn't have to be, go exercise. There are a lot of different ways that we can provide that kind of programming. And it's a way for us to show that people's work-life balance matters to us because we're helping them find ways to improve that. So those were a few of my ideas. I am definitely interested in hearing feedback or questions.
Yeah, so this is really just advisory right now, or what they're thinking about, but we welcome any comments from the staff members.
Yeah.
Here.
How many employees do we currently have here at the village? Union versus non-union? Do we know off the top of our head?
We have about 150-ish regular employees, but that does include union. I would say about 3/4 of those are union. So it does make a difference because
And when you say
It's
that,
huge.
that includes
Yeah.
fire, police,
Correct.
all the safety
Right.
stuff too.
right, and a lot of these they can't apply
Right,
to those.
union stuff we
Right.
can't touch. And so how many non-union employees do we currently have? They'd be mostly at Village Hall.
It would
Plus
be,
our directors, correct?
and the library, yeah.
Mhm.
So
That when you
40-ish.
come back, whoever's going to bring this back, I'd like to see a breakdown of that. I'd like to see how many people we have lost over the past 2 years. What has been our retention rate? And I don't mean people leaving because of retirement. They actually have left for another job. I wouldn't even include Jay in that because of his special circumstance, of why he left. I would like to have an analysis of how serious the situation is. And I don't know if it's possible to find out how some of the surrounding communities, what their retention rates are. Probably difficult, but I would like to get a better handle on, is this a significant problem that needs to be addressed right now, or is it not?
Yeah, go
If I can just, and I think that's good information and some things that we can pull together. I think in particular, what I would say the focus should be is, as you think about the direction you'd like the village to take on this, isn't necessarily for the people who have left in the past. But what I'm seeing here and what I'm hearing from other communities as well is that there is kind of this wave of retirements that's hitting. And, as you walk through Village Hall, you can see that a lot of new faces and a lot of new people around. And one of the things that I think is, if you look at the HR literature, and I've seen this in other places I've been as well, if people are going to leave, they're most likely to leave in their first 5 years here. Before they get, you kind of train them. They get 2 or 3 years here. They know the job, but there's not as much holding them here. And I think the intention of this is like, okay, and the intention of the focus group that Michelle ran was to try to identify things that are really important to those folks who are here in their first 5 years, so that we try to keep as many of them as possible. So I think it's not, I'm not saying there's a problem. I think the majority of the people who have left here recently have been retirements, but it's with this new kind of wave of employees in. I think it's a good time to kind of take a look
Sure.
at the issue and put that out there. And this is a kind of a long laundry list. There's some ranges of things, like Michelle said, some of them are simple, some of them are more
Right.
controversial.
Nice, still. But set me up. I mean, you got to put the pins in place before I roll the ball down the alley. Okay, what is the situation here at Germantown? How does it compare to others? How serious? I know with the end village engineer, very serious, but that's another whole animal because engineers are just hard to obtain right now. I mean, everything is being constructed everywhere you go. It's just crazy. People are hiring engineers. So what's the scope of our situation? Let's not even call it a problem. What's the scope of the situation in Germantown? Is this something new? And let's also interview the employees who've been here more than 5 years about why they stay, not just the ones about why they go. Because frankly, we know we don't have lots more money to throw at this scenario. And my feeling is you're the boss. And I mean, this is my feeling alone. You're the boss. So some of these things, if you want to give somebody a day off because they've killed themselves on a project, that's your discretion already. I don't even need to know about that. And it shouldn't become policy. It should be our village administrators running things and just
Okay.
go do it.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
That's a good point. It's things that are policy and things that are just your discretion. And I think we need to know that as well, what you're able to do with all this. Yes.
I have to agree with you, Terry, because one of the things I was writing down here that while Michelle was talking is the village board shouldn't be managing employees. The administrator should. And I agree too. There are things that I think that you can do that we certainly, if you want to let us know you're doing it, or I don't think you have to seek our permission on some of this, but I read the memo, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I was very impressed with what you had in the memo. And some of those things are small things, and there isn't a lot of money, but some of these aren't huge costs either. In my years working in the corporate world and the nonprofit world, I've noticed too that it's very difficult to retain employees beyond 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, because a pension or retirement doesn't mean as much to them anymore because they feel they have a long time to gain towards it. So they're going to work one place 5 years and a higher salary comes with better benefits. They're going to maybe fly off in that direction. And I went through that with my own kids, trying to tell them the importance of sticking it out somewhere and working towards it. But I think flexibility and schedule, I think, is also very important. As long as you have the bases covered here, if some people can work from at home, but I think it has to be administered on a fair basis so that everybody has that same opportunity. And that's something that you have to do along with department heads here is to work on that. The spot bonuses thing, I've seen that hit and I've seen that miss because sometimes some people, while you feel it stays confidential, it gets out and then somebody else gets miffed because, oh my, he got $100 and I didn't. So that to me is something, and the compensation, I don't know where we're at in the pay scales around here, and I think that'd be something really interesting to see. But I think working with employees to develop their careers are important, and letting them know that as they progress here, that there's a possibility that their boss is maybe going to retire in 5 years, and you may have a shot at doing this. So you might have to go back to school. You might have to put in a little longer hours to learn and retain some things. But I think sitting down with employees is certainly very important. And if they can see a clear path to getting somewhere ahead in the world, I think they're going to stay. And I have to agree that the wellness programs, I think today are huge. So, maybe you should have the recreation director lead jumping jacks every morning here. Or afterwards. But I think that's huge. But there are a lot of good things in here, and to see further details. But I think Terry's got a good point.
May I have a follow-up question?
Yes.
Michelle, with your human resources background, this has always been one of my things, even like with where I'm working now. The fourth bullet, ability to increase an employee's pay within their pay grade. I've been trying to do that for an employee for a long time. And I mean, these people, these who are in charge are like these are their parameters. And unless that person takes on X, Y, and Z additionally, they do not budge. What's behind that? I mean, I think there should be some elasticity to that, which apparently I'm the only person that feels that way.
Obviously, I feel that way because I put it in there. I think part of it is that once you do it for one person, everybody's afraid everybody else is going to want it, and that it becomes a trend, and it's easier to keep people under tight control, I think is part of it. And honestly, I think sometimes it comes down to, and this is my own opinion, but I think it comes down to we assume that it's going to be a problem, and so we don't push as hard as maybe we should. There's a lot of reasons, I think.
Yeah, because that always seems to be a sticking point. And I get the part where somebody's been here for 20 years.
Right.
They've maxed out in their, whatever their little framework is, and you have to figure out a way to retain them. Now that via bonuses or something. But that is a challenge, and I'd like to see that 100% take a closer look at that. If
Okay.
we could be fair and yet have some elasticity in these ranges.
I can just talk about a few of these points. I've kind of in a similar area in the private sector. We have about 75 employees, diverse. Some can have a flexible schedules, others cannot. You know, you're looking at public works, you're not going to be that flexible. But people in the office might be. And we've had this policy for a long time, well before the lockdown last year. And it seems to work, and it does seem that the younger staff is now expecting that. You know, they're expecting some flexibility. They're expecting telecommuting. That's the expectation, and that's not going to go away. That's actually here to stay. And if it doesn't affect the performance and doesn't affect the coverage here, there's ways to work that out. As an example, we had Friday afternoons off for many years. You know, we did a flex schedule or a compressed schedule, Friday afternoons off, and my IT guy and I said, okay, you cover one Friday, I'll cover the other. And then we took a full Friday off every other Friday in the summer. It was great, but we need to have that ability to do that with some of our staff, or as many staff as possible. One size isn't going to fit all here, but hopefully we can take some of these things and make it a little bit more pleasant work environment. So, any other questions, comments on this topic? Look forward to, you know, to seeing the next level of this, and you know, see what we're going to bring forth. We will go on to item 2, which is bond council agreement, approval of bond council letter of engagement with Griggs Law Office LLC, and Administrator Kreckle, I believe, is going to take this.
Yes, thank you. This is each year when we issue debt for some of our capital programs. And at the last village board meeting, the village board authorized the issuance of $3.2 million in bonds. We need to engage a bond counsel to provide some legal services related to that. Putting together the documents for the sale and the closing, the legal opinion on the tax exemption of the issue, all of those kinds of things. We have used for quite some time Thomas Griggs of Griggs Law Offices, and he's submitted an estimate for the amount of $11,250 to provide those services this year. That's consistent with what it's been in past years. That's over especially for Trustee Nyrider, who's new. That's above my contracting authority of $7,500. It falls into the range where the committee can approve that, and I'm requesting approval to execute the letter of agreement with Griggs Law Offices.
And Steve, if I recall our conversation, this is nothing really new, but it seemed to have slipped through the cracks and wasn't actually approved by the committee in the past.
That's correct. We've done this every year. I think in the past it was kind of considered, even though it wasn't explicit in the documents, that when the village board approved the authorization, that it was implied that the contract was approved. And it's just one of the things, trying to make sure that all the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed. So.
Any motion to approve? All right, we have a motion to approve this. Any discussion?
What was that total amount again, Steve?
$11,250.
Thank you.
All right, if nothing else, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, property appraisal service agreement.
This one is mine as well, and it's an old issue and a new issue. As trustees probably recall, there have been a couple of times in the past, not too distant past, some proposals related to Blackstone Golf Course, both for development and a couple of different concepts that have been brought forward. Neither of them approved for the village to acquire some or all of the Blackstone property. Over the past several months, the owners of Blackstone Golf Course and a developer that they're working with have approached village staff with a newer concept, a different concept than has been brought forward before. They have informed us their intention is to bring something forward this year that would include some residential development of the property, and they are also going to propose or offer to sale to the village some or all of the golf course property. One of the things that I think has created some difficulties in dealing with this issue in the past is we haven't had a good handle on what the golf course property is worth. So I was able to find in the metropolitan area here a property appraiser he's one of 18 property appraisers in the United States that's certified to value golf courses, to place value on golf courses. He also has a great deal of experience in Wisconsin. There's some state grant programs that help communities acquire property for parks if they're interested in doing that. He also has experience doing that. And I did ask him for an estimate of what he would charge the village to provide those services to us, so that in the event this does, I did check in with the ownership of the golf course this afternoon, just, hey, are you still planning on going forward with this? And the response was yes, they are planning to bring a proposal to the village. This would allow us to have some information on the value of the golf course when that proposal comes forward. It would be for $6,500 from Stephen Vitale, who is a part of Valdbridge Property Advisors. So I'm requesting authorization to execute that agreement.
And I think we should specify that there is nothing of an agreement or anything like that. It's just obtaining a value on that property for anything future that would be coming up. Trustee Kaminsky.
Is this premature? I mean, I'd like to have them come before us because we've chased with them in the past. And I was a part of the board, as was Rick, at the time. And I mean, we chased with those guys back and forth, back and forth. And I don't want this to be another one of those things where we've just spent $6,500 to tell them the value of their property. Why don't they tell us? I mean, why don't they get them? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It kind of left a bad taste in some of our mouths. But so just so you know that. And so I personally, until they actually came before us and told us, what are we talking about here? How many acres? And is it all the low floodplain stuff? Like, remember how we went through that before, where so much of this golf course is in floodplain, you can't do much with it?
It'd be along the river.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know what the property is. I don't want to give them an appraisal of their golf course and then they give us the slice that's in floodplain, to be honest with you. I'd like to see what they're talking about first. And I can't see why they can't drive that if they're trying to sell it.
Well, knowing a little bit about the appraisal world, they will get their own appraisal, period. But anybody who's a potential buyer can do their own appraisal, of course, and would want to do their own appraisal on the property for bargaining purposes and that. So it may be premature, it may not be. I don't know yet.
I'd like to know how many acres.
I know last time that they threw out a number and I went, how in the world are they getting that value? You know, for a floodplain.
Basically.
In the, as a part of this proposal, the appraiser would look at various uses. He would appraise the land both as a golf course. He would take into consideration the portions of the land that can't be used for anything else. And he would also take a look at the value of land that could have a different, higher and best use. So he would be looking at at all of those factors. I certainly, understand the sentiment about, is this premature? And I don't think there would be anything wrong with waiting until they submit the proposal. I think there is a little bit of chicken and egg in there with trying to, because one of the questions they might ask us is, well, what portion would the village be interested in? And to some extent, that might be dependent upon on the cost of the land. And I guess the other thought behind bringing it forward now is that, and I've been with the village now a little over 3.5 years. It does seem like, regardless of whether it's this year or at some point in the future, it seems like this is with the location of the property and the nature of the property, it could be something that comes up if it's not this year, at some point in the future. Having and owning this information may be of value to
But
it.
it may change as well.
Right.
2 years from now, it's going to be appraised differently. I'm sorry, am I speaking out of turn?
No, go ahead.
I just feel that I would like to get an idea of what they're talking about. Like, they're going to hopefully build homes or whatever they want to do here, or have a developer do that. How many acres are we talking about? I don't want to appraise everything and know that, okay, this is the slice of the pie over here. We really don't want you to have this other half of the pie. Why would I spend money on that? I don't feel like I have enough information to know what we're appraising this for, to be honest with you. I personally think if we had most of the land, it's a perfect place for a park. We've never doubted that. I think even back in the day, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, our real big hangup was not just the price. It was the fact that Green Seams wanted it. And we were working with Green Seams, and they would barely let you put a picnic table in there. And if we're not dealing with that, I think this is an ideal place for a park for the village. And I would love to have it. But I want to know if we're talking about 10 acres, we're talking about 50 acres, what are we talking about?
And I'm not, and that's a good question. And again, I think a valid point. Just to answer to the extent that I can from what they have indicated to us, there is a piece of the property and where they would be looking at residential development, and that would be sold to that developer, and that's primarily the area that's closest to Division. And the discussions
There's a little bit on Main Street.
thus far were, were that the sections, basically the remainder of the golf course would be sold to the village. And we would probably look at some sort of lease back of a portion of it for them to operate a 9 or 12 hole golf course.
I am totally, I don't get it. So that's where I'm going to come out on this one. I want them to come in here and tell us what they're doing and exactly how much of that acreage is going to be. They already have an idea what they're going to sell to the developer, and show us the map. What are we getting? And do we want to lease back a golf course? Why do we, I'm having a total disconnect, because if I have that land, I want a park. I don't want a golf course.
Well, and I think that's what they're looking for, and a staff that we're looking for direction from the village board. Does the village want a golf course there? Do the trustees want the entire property used as a park? So there are a lot of questions. I think that.
I think we have to determine, I think, from the get-go with them, if there's any interest on the part of the entire village board in pursuing it. This is not just a GGF issue.
The last proposal was, was shot down pretty quick.
But it was shut down because of Green Seams.
No, I'm talking about the second one that came with the townhouses or the
Last
brownstones.
yeah.
Last
Yeah.
But I think this is a issue that's beyond the scope of us. Obviously, we're going to vote on this. I'm going to vote no. And it's going to come before the village board, because this deserves significant discussion, I think.
Trustee Myers, I think you had some comments, didn't you?
Basically speaking, I agree with Terry. I could add some more onto it as such, but my
Okay,
underboarding, no.
sounds good. I think Mark wants to come up and say a few words regarding this.
Hello, everyone. Just a couple thoughts, and I think we've been part of some discussions in the last couple of years about the merits of any kind of proposal that has to do with the golf course. So the Park and Rec Commission has talked about utilization potentially, the importance of acquiring and protecting the Menominee River. Could you link this up in the future? I think we all agree with those kind of things. Questions that have come up at the Park and Rec Commission level are the same. Where did the value come from? Where are we coming from with that? So I would just echo it sometime, if not tonight, and sometime in the future, it's important information that we need to have. The DNR grant process, if that's a route that we would go, is a lengthy one when it comes to land acquisition. And it's important to have the information, the appraisal, and know what you're talking about, because that really sets, once you have an appraisal done, you have to have a certified, and that kind of sets what the grant match would be for the community. So I think it's important. We obviously need that information. I would hope that in addition to acquiring some land along the Menominee River, I totally agree, Terry, that we don't want to have just the floodplain that we can't do anything with. So I would hope as we go forth, there'd be an opportunity to link up to Hopstrasse Park on the east. And I think in that area, you have a better chance of being able to develop some type of recreational facility. So, it's something we've been talking about. Certainly it's beyond what the Park and Rec Commission can talk about when it comes to money. Ultimately, that's GGF and the village board. But I think it's, whether it's now or 2 months, it obviously you guys need to have some information to make the best decision for the village. So just a thought.
Question. Actually, while you're up there, so you're planning on getting the DNR involved via the rec committee? Is that the direction they're taking?
No,
Because
no,
that was our
it's,
problem last time.
and I should say that the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the grant program is not the same as Green Seams
No
and
restrictions at all?
MMSD. Not like, to my knowledge, the DNR grant programs, they've got acquisition and development of local parks, they've got urban rivers, they've got urban green space.
Okay,
Those programs are different than
as long as we can
Green
actually
Seam.
utilize the space, put ball fields there if we want to, put up the volleyball net, put the picnic tables in, carve paths in there, throw a canoe in the river, and actually utilize the space, then I'm fine with it.
I
I think it should
totally
be a
agree with
significant
you.
park, not just, 50
I-
feet on either side of the river, and that belongs to us. And not a lease back. What did we gain from a lease back of a golf course? Nothing, except probably some legal issues, potentially. I mean, it's,
And all I'm saying with regard to the time frame is the DNR programs, just to go through the steps and the approval.
but
Totally different than Green Seams.
okay, but I really think that there should be a presentation before the entire village board, and we should have the two people in here that can make this happen, which are the owners of that golf course. And until we see what they want to do, why would we spend $6,500? And then they decide again, we're going to run the golf course for 5 more years, and we just spent $6,500 for nothing,
Mhm.
because that appraisal isn't going to hold for more than what, a couple of years. It just won't.
You're certainly right. You need to have a willing seller.
So let's
And-
figure out if he is a willing seller, and let's start from the beginning and get him before the village board so we can actually figure this out. I'd love to have it as a park, but I don't want to back into it and waste $6,500 either.
Trustee Myers?
We're gonna run out of time pretty soon. I'm gonna make a motion to accept this proposal.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. So I think we had most of our discussion. Is there any more discussion or comments? Yeah, it might be a little bit early for this, and I fully expect that if something comes back from Blackstone Creek and their owners, that we can revisit this whole thing and start the whole process at that point. Yes, Steve?
If I could just say, and I'm completely fine with that. The one thing that I would suggest, just kind of hearing the conversation and kind of thinking about this process and trying to think through how to manage it, because this is, if we do go down this path again with this conversation, it's one of the more complicated things with a lot of moving pieces that we deal with in the village. There, both in terms of working through the Parks Commission to decide if we're going to acquire it, doing a master plan for the park to determine what that's going to look like. And then, on a whole separate track, we've got the issue of the development itself and what does that look like and what does the Plan Commission think and how does that fit in with all of those pieces. So I'm not at all disagreeing with the committee's decision here. And I think, we can hold on to this quote. I think we found the right group to do this if and when we decide to do it. And we'll keep moving forward with that.
Would it be more proper to table this then? Do we just vote on it and then
I just want to
bring it back?
going, it didn't bring it back up again when we have the
Yeah.
information.
Right, that's fine.
May I just
Yes.
make one more comment? I think, I agree with Steve, I agree with you. And I think if you talk to Blackstone Creek owners tomorrow, we're ready to look at this next week. If they really are serious about moving forward, they're going to know what they're going to sell to a developer. We don't care what goes on there, because that's not what we were talking about. We're talking about the park part of this. So as long as they could show us what we would be thinking about, we could move ahead with this whole thing within a week if they really wanted to, in my opinion. As obviously a full board decision, not just a GGF decision. But I would totally support that. I just need to know what we're talking about and in what time frame, because we were on that hook. That was almost 2 years of conversation last time.
It was actually a little before my time on the board, but I do remember it. I remember reading all about it and the whole conversation around it. So, if there's no more comments, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion fails. Okay, item D, resolution 14-2021 approved commitment and assignment of special revenue fund balance specific to the Fire Department Explorer program.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I need some details on this.
Yes, same here.
This one is mine.
All right.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
No, that's actually the proper way to do it. Make the motion and then get the discussion, so.
Fire Chief Delane came to me that they're receiving donations for the Fire Explorer program that you've read about in the newspaper. And he wanted to make sure that the funds were appropriately deposited and accounted for. I contacted Baker Tilly and they gave me some information about past funds that had been set up and the right avenues to go forward. So this would allow this to be accounted for correctly for the Fire Department Explorer program. And this item would go on to Village Board as well.
So this is a fund that's in the control of the village?
Correct.
It
would
is.
be very, very similar to the K-9 fund.
Got it.
Very similar to that
Sure.
approach in a way to keep track of those funds that are coming in or donations.
Okay. Committee, any questions, comments? If not, we will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that finishes new business. There is no unfinished business, so we will go to reports. And the first one is,
Revenue.
we have all of them, monthly, year-to-date, and year-to-date financials?
Well, I've got monthly, I've got the one ending May 31st, 2021, which we're not there, so it was just year to date.
So year-to-date, okay.
And I do want to follow up. Last month, Trustee Kaminsky had pointed out about the streetlights. And just as a follow-up to that, Deputy Clerk Rozak, she had been working very hard with We Energies. They had changed their billing systems and account numbers. And with her research, she was able to save the village 60 grand with what she was doing.
Wow.
So the group that takes care of
the accounts payables, they are the watchdogs for all of us and do a terrific job. And that includes Britton Smith sitting here with us today, taking minutes. She's doing a great job. So, so they are definitely paying attention to those expenditures, asking questions appropriately, bringing them up to myself and the administrator, and saying something when something is amiss. So just wanted to give a kudo there.
That's great. With that said, that's fantastic. Any other questions or anything you saw through these? All right, if not, we will go to the health and dental plans.
What I did on those was simply pull the reports straight off of MSI. You had seen spreadsheets in the past. I can go back to the spreadsheets if you'd like to see that. And I believe next month there's going to be some information from the self-insurance. Carmen Winkleman is coming. Is that what I understand?
She won't be at the meeting.
Oh, she won't be at the meeting, but there'll be some more information coming forward about the health insurance as we're self-insured. Health continues to have some high expenditures. Dental is doing well, just as in the past.
Okay. Anything? Nope. Impact fees.
Again, I pulled these straight off of MSI, the program. And you see, I don't know if you can see it, but it says Police Impact Fee Fund. It's really small there. So you can see the individual impact fees. To me, this just seems to be a more accurate way to report it rather than building spreadsheets. You can see the information.
Now, these impact fees, they have to be used in a certain time frame, right?
Correct. They
Are we
do.
running low on any time frames yet?
Not that I'm aware of, unless Administrator Krecklow knows of something. They're being used for payments.
The last, no, the short answer is no, we're not. The last one that we were coming up against was the police impact fee, and we built the garage and issued some debt related to that, so that's able to resolve that issue. The next one that we'll need to give some thought to will be the library. We recently paid off the bond for the library, and we'll need to start planning, what to do with the impact fees that are coming in related to the library. But we have time to do that.
Okay, thank you. Item C, accounts payables. We have a few of them, April 23rd, April 30th, May 7th, and May 14th.
Just, can I say something about these as well?
Yeah, please.
So a couple of things that I have done. One is I have reached out to our bank, and they are giving us our general account checks for free. So in case you're wondering about something of that, they are able to do that for us for both general and payroll. The other item Britton Smith was just working on was finding out the dates for certain items that we pay on a regular basis, so we're not issuing a bunch for each check run. So as we fine tune this, that's another item that we were working towards. So you would see items that are all due, let's say on the 15th of the month, we're not cutting them throughout. We're getting on a tighter schedule. So that is correct.
Just forgive me for being naive, but do we do any electronic transfers, or is it all checks?
We do, and a lot of those would be with the wires in the debt payments in the next report. Those are mostly the wires and wires between other funds to the U.S. Bank. Good question. Yep.
All right, any questions on accounts payable? If not, we'll move to debt payments.
So I've just continued, so you can see the debt payments. And I've got the latest one at the very bottom on May 1st. The water system revenue bond payment that was made.
Any questions on debt payments? Good, I think we're done with financials then. Monthly code violation reports, community development first.
A few changes since last month. We have 2 items that are closed. The sign at the BP station on County Line Road, and the lights related to the Colgate gas station on County Line Road. Those have been resolved and will be off the list next month. There are 3 new ones that actually came in last week that are listed on the second page of this report. Some chickens in a residential neighborhood, some complaints of then some vehicles being stored on properties, and accumulation of used equipment and wood, and notices have been sent out to those 3 residents. So those are new on the list this month. The chicken issue was on Fond du Lac Avenue. The junk tires and auto repair issue are on Royal Court. And the accumulation of wood, used equipment, and other trash was on Pilgrim Road.
Question.
Yeah, trustee Kaminsky.
I don't know, Steve, if you would even have an answer to this, but the Fond du Lac Avenue, I'm trying to envision small properties on Fond du Lac Avenue where chickens would be an issue. Do you happen to know where that is on Fond du Lac Avenue, or how much, what the acreage is, or?
I don't. That one was just issued last week, and the first I knew of this was when I looked at the report earlier today. So, but I can follow up on that and send you an email.
Yeah, I'd be just curious because if it's not a small yard, I mean, Fond du Lac Avenue to me is pretty much rural to semi-rural.
Some codes. I mean, there's codes
Yeah.
revolving around that, so.
Yeah.
There is, and if I remember right, this issue came up a year and a half ago. And I don't recall the size of the lots, but on smaller lots, there are restrictions on chickens, and but I'll gather that information and send an email to the committee.
Okay. Item F, CIP projects. I don't think we have anything in our packet for that. Do we?
Oh, I'm sorry.
See, I just prompted you, that's why.
So there isn't much change from last month, I'm sorry. But yes, I got it here. Not much change from last year at all, or last month.
Any questions on capital improvements? If not, we'll go to item G, letter of credit summaries, Public Works first. Doesn't look like there's much change here.
Yeah, the only one that's coming up here is LRT, which is the dielectric plant. And that one is up at the end of the month. I talked with the Public Works Director earlier today. He said basically the work is done, all the paperwork is in, they're just reviewing the final as-built and some of the other documents that came in here recently. So that one should be good to expire at the end of May.
Okay. Letter of credits from,
Question.
oh, I'm sorry.
And looking on the library roof, there's over $100,000 left. Where's it going to be put?
On capital,
Yeah.
that's on the capital report. Could, actually, would you mind if I?
Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Didn't offer an extra sheet.
That's all right.
I have that right here.
That will be used for the audio visual here.
That's right.
So it's.
That's
your-
the,
We reappropriated that.
yeah, the village board moved that money over to be used for the AV work that's going to be starting actually in the next couple of days. This should be the last night of meetings with the old AV system.
There was about 95,000, if I remember right.
All right, letter of credit from planning and zoning. Change, nothing changed.
Nothing new to report on that.
Okay. Village contracts.
And again, not much new to report here. This is the time of year when not a lot of contract activity. There's nothing coming due or renewed this month.
All right, with that, we're through our agenda. We'll schedule our next meeting, which if we stay with the same timeline, it would be the 21st of June at 6 p.m. Is that okay with everybody? All right, we'll schedule it for 6 p.m., 21st of June. And with that, we are adjourned.